The Toronto district of Riverdale gets its name from the Don River that lies along the western side of the area. Sandwiched between Cabbagetown and Leslieville, Riverdale is a pocket-sized gem that seems to offer the simple pleasures of everyday life without losing the luxury of Toronto city living. Riverdale is part of the 1788 British government purchase of 208,000 acres of land from the Mississaugas. John Graves Simcoe, the Lieutenant Governor of Upper Canada, distributed this land east of the Don to encourage farming. They formed the basis of first Riverside and then Riverdale. We will start our peek at Riverdale at a recent Chinese arch that marks the entrance to Toronto's Chinatown East. The Chinese arrived in the 1950s from Elizabeth Street in the Dundas-Spadina area because costs were lower in the east. The first businesses were probably laundries due to the demand for uniform cleaning at the nearby Don Jail. North, across Gerrard Street from the arch, is a simple structure, the original house of the Deputy Jail Governor. The Governor's residence is a more substantial building just to the east, built in 1888, and now a hostel for sick children, Emily's House. The Don Jail was designed by William Thomas in 1859. It was finally closed in 2011. It's now used as an administrative block for the Herrick Bridgepoint Hospital immediately to the west. Note the carved bearded face in the keystone over the entrance to the jail. Is this old man Time, a bearded bishop, or is it the head of Christ? You decide for yourself. After entering the heavy oak doors, we arrived at the central atrium, which was a great advance in jail architecture, since it allowed natural light to enter from above. There is a self-guided tour of the jail if you want to spend more time here. On the left is a passageway where you can see the narrow entrances to some of the cells. These sometimes house 3 prisoners using hammocks, one above the other. Herrick Bridgepoint Hospital is over a bridge from the jail. On the main floor is Tim Hortons coffee shop, and beyond this, the main entrance of the hospital. Bridgepoint is part of Sinai Health and an internationally recognized 464-bed rehabilitation and complex care hospital affiliated with the University of Toronto. Bridgepoint replaces Riverview Hospital, which was an externally attractive semicircular building, but renowned for its slow, crowded elevators. This, in turn, had replaced the Isolation Hospital, originally built as a house of refuge for incurables, incapables, and indigent poor. In 1872, it was transformed into what became known as the Isolation Hospital. Here, people with numerous diseases were cared for, including tuberculosis, scarlet fever, and smallpox. A 30-year plan for Bridgepoint envisages 2 10-story buildings in the future. Immediately to the east of the Don Jail, a long-term care home, and just to the north, an east-west oriented further hospital expansion. St. Matthew's Lawn Bowling Club clubhouse is a 1.5-story structure that was constructed as a clubhouse for St. Matthew's Lawn Bowling Club. It was relocated in 2009 in Riverdale Park East, just north of St. Matthew's Road. The clubhouse has been given a heritage designation in its new site on Broadview Avenue, opposite Langley Avenue. Broadview Avenue was originally Mill Road, then it became Don Mills Road. 469 Broadview is said to be the oldest inhabited house in Toronto. The property immediately to the east of what was John Scadding's original lot was deeded to John Cox by Governor Simcoe in 1796. The first stage of the structure was a small 16-foot by 24-foot log cabin facing due south. A log extension has been added to the rear and the facade was modernized as we see it today. Riverdale Park East is a park of 10 acres, part of 1,019 acres purchased by the city from the Scadding estate in 1856 for £10,000. The park is built on the floodplain of the meandering Dodd River after it was straightened in 1888. The park took several years to construct, but the labor cost the city nothing since it was built by inmates of the Don Jail. They used garbage to fill much of the old riverbed, and vertical green posts beside Broadview at the top of the slope vent methane gas still being produced by this garbage. This spot gives a marvelous panorama of downtown Toronto and often is a site of great sunsets. In 1886, road construction immediately east of the park uncovered artifacts of a First Nations settlement in the area above the valley. These can be seen today in Withrow Avenue Junior School, where a display case is close to the Bain Street entrance. An historical plaque is beside the sidewalk close to the main entrance of the school on Bain Avenue. Riverdale Courts, later the Bain Cooperative, was constructed in 1913 by Eden Smith, who lived 1858 to 1949. He was Toronto's leading arts and crafts style architect. This development was a public-private partnership to provide low-income public housing during the housing crisis after the First World War. There are now 256 flats in the English cottage style. The Bain Apartments Cooperative was formed in 1977. Originally, the flats had no kitchens, but a communal kitchen fed residents in a communal hall. Withrow Park is a 21-acre park in the Riverdale neighborhood north of Bain Street. Laid out and constructed in the 1910s, at the same time that the surrounding Riverdale Courts community was built, Withrow Park is among Toronto's several large multi-purpose parks. The park is named after John Jacob Withrow, a local landowner and builder who also served as a city alderman and was one of the founders of what would become the Canadian National Exhibition. Pape Avenue was originally called Robinson Street. Sir John Beverley Robinson was the first baronet, and in 1854 became Toronto Attorney General and the Chief Justice of Canada. The name was changed because of name duplication with the Robinson Street west of the Don. The street was then named for Joseph Pape, one of many local gardeners. At the time, on the east side of the street were 17 market gardeners and the Jewish cemetery. Pape Avenue is now a corridor for the Ontario Line subway extension, for which construction has just started. The subway will run south under Pape to the railway tracks, where it will then become above ground. There is a pedestrian bridge here to cross the train tracks. The two halves of Gerrard Square northeast and southwest, can be seen from this bridge. The northeast portion will be completely redeveloped with residences and some retail. Pape Avenue Cemetery, officially known as Holy Blossom Cemetery, was the first Jewish cemetery in the city of Toronto. The small cemetery is now closed to new burials and is mostly hidden within the residential neighborhood of Badara. It was established in 1849 by two prominent local businessmen, Judah Joseph and Abraham Nordheimer. At the time, the nearest Jewish cemeteries were in Montreal or Buffalo, and Joseph was concerned for his fatally ill son Samuel, who eventually became the first burial in the new cemetery. The location, near the corner of Pape and Gerrard, was then in a rural area to the east of the city. It was not close to much of the Jewish community, but it was a convenient location to purchase. Badegau Avenue commemorates George Washington Badegau, who was a lawyer elected as a Liberal to the Ontario legislature. This whole area is also referred to by local residents as Badegau, after this street. This pocket includes the legendary Maple Leaf Tavern, as well as a Sikh temple, Turkish cultural center, and the Jewish cemetery we've already seen. Carlaw was the location of many commercial enterprises. Behind the properties was a railway siding built in 1926. Names can still be seen on some of the buildings for Rolf Clark Stone lithographers, Phillips Manufacturer Holdings, William Wrigley Chewing Gum, and Delco Light Company. Their old premises have now been converted to residential housing. Queen Street was the Kingston Road until 1884 and is the oldest street in Riverdale. Even earlier, it was referred to as the Road to Montreal. In 1884, it was named in honor of Queen Victoria. The oldest building on the street, built in 1794, was the Scadding Cabin. It was close to the Don River on Queen Street. It was a simple log cabin and was moved to the Canadian National Exhibition Grounds in 1879, where it can still be seen today. Other early buildings were inns that served the needs of the many travelers. When the government of Canada decided to build a post office to the east end of Toronto, the 1913 contract was given to architect Edward James Lennox. He was called the Builder of Toronto, since he was responsible for Old City Hall, the Casa Loma, and St. Paul's Anglican on Bloor East. The Riverdale Post Office was one of Lennox's last commissions. He retired in 1917, died in 1933. Since the post office was built on a corner block, It gave Lenox an opportunity for a broader expanse of architectural detail. The interior was quite lavish, with marble counters. The intricate 1913 clock was restored in 1995. The building now houses the Queen Salter Public Library and Ralph Thornton Center and Community Services. In 1891, an entrepreneur named Archibald Dingman built one of Riverdale's most remarkable buildings on the northwest corner of Queen and Broadview, Dingman's Hall. It was a rental property for local businesses, organizations, and events. One such organization was the Royal Canadian Bicycle Club. The club was founded in 1891 and was dedicated to the encouragement of bicycling, athletic sports, and good fellowship. The club occupied the upper floors of Dingman Hall, and the club parlors were upholstered and furnished in the best of style. The building is in the Romanesque style with a number of notable terracotta plaques. Dingman's Hall gradually deteriorated, and around 2010 became a strip club, Gillies, and a doss house. A room could be had for $90 a week. In 2015, the building was completely renovated and is now the Broadview Hotel, with room rates up to $400 a night. Almost hidden on the east side of Broadview, we find the Royal Canadian Curling Club. In 1907, a new clubhouse was erected for the Royal Canadian Cycle Club, who moved out of Dingwall Hall. Then, in 1929, a rink was built behind the clubhouse, which marked the transformation of the Royals from a cycling club to a curling club. Inside the club, you will see one of the largest trophies in the world, a cycling cup, which is almost 2 meters high. So Riverdale is a lovely mix of old and new. Brick houses corner each street, but many have modern, upbeat furnishings and plenty of unique details. On any given day, streets are lined with running groups, strollers, and shoppers. The astute may have noticed that these landmarks, properties, and institutions that we have been describing can be seen on foot in a circular route that is marked on the map being shown now. The distance to be walked is a little over 4.5 kilometers. Enjoy.